Caroline, and could I just say, well, thank you very much, Caroline, and could I just say welcome to everybody. It's always an incredible moment to see all the names appearing in the box up at the top and to see where everybody is listening in from. So it's a great pleasure, a nerve-wracking pleasure, but a great pleasure to be here to run this webinar, which is about interactive whiteboards. And just to spend a second telling you who I am, I teach English for academic purposes at Warwick University, and I'm a teacher trainer, and also I review books, and I think it's absolutely incredible that this book arrived this morning. It's just a sign, really, isn't it? Interactive whiteboards for education, theory, research and practice. So I'm absolutely delighted that that's come, and also I'm on the Learning Technologies Special Interest Group for IATEFL. I'm happy to say I'm the Deputy Coordinator, and I'm very pleased about that. So let's have a look at what we're going to do over the next hour or so. First of all, we'll just take a look briefly at hardware and software, and then just move into some of the arguments for and against installing interactive whiteboards in your schools. And then the central part really is looking at practical ideas, and these are divided into those areas that you can see on the screen, starting with grammar and vocabulary, looking at the 4 language skills, and then looking at pronunciation and games. And I hope to finish a little bit early so you'll be able to type questions into the text box, and we'll have a question session right at the end. Please visit this address. It's really important because I've put all the various handouts and all the links that I mentioned in this session up there. So if you go to that address and then click on blog, you'll be able to see all of the links. And also there's a place at the bottom, so if you don't get your question in this afternoon, maybe you could post any ideas or any questions to the blog, and I'll be able to answer them from there. So I'm going to start the webinar by reading you the very first 2 sentences from this book. The first 2 sentences are: what do Mexico and the UK have in common at the time of writing, which is relevant to this book? The answer is that in both countries, interactive whiteboards have become an integral part of classroom life. Now, I've just come back from Mexico, where I was there this summer, and Mexico now have the highest number of interactive whiteboards in the world. At the same time, some of those boards are not being used, but I would say that if we looked at Mexico as a country, there is a positive approach there to using IWBs, and it's the same for the UK, even though within specific institutions that may not be the case. I've been many times to Germany and asked people if they have interactive whiteboards. One of the authors of this book works in Germany, that's Julien Kuttrim-Schmidt, and where she works, clearly there are IWBs. But across the country, I would say Germany is very low in the area of IWB penetration. So I wonder if you could just kindly type in the name of your country into the text box and just put a plus if you believe that the IWB penetration is high, if you have a very positive attitude within the country as a whole to using IWBs, or if you think it's negative. I was in Switzerland once and I was told that the cantons are very rich, but they have a lot of thinking to do before they make this investment. So how would you say that IWBs are in Argentina, in Poland, in some of the places where you are? Poland, so Aga, thank you very much. You put a plus. Yeah, the UK is very clearly a plus. Italy's a plus. Let's have a look. Russia has got a plus. Certainly the UK. Canada's got a plus. There hasn't been a single negative so far. Argentina only in a 1-to-1 computer session. Okay, well I can see that it's quite interesting, and it's wonderful. Peru has got a plus too, to see so many pluses coming in. So I'm trying to locate Peru. My eyes are going. Help! I think that you're there. Poland. Okay, Russia. Okay, and Argentina has come through there with a negative. I'm really interested in this because I'm going to go to Argentina in February, so it was great to see Jennifer Vershaw's name appearing in the box. Hello there, Jennifer. Okay, so it's a very, very mixed picture across the globe, and as to whether IWBs are in use, whether they are installed but not being used, or whether there are IWBs, how can I say, it's still on the agenda for whether people will buy them or not. So let's move into the very first part of the seminar. Thank you very much for your comments there. We're going to take a look in part one at hardware and software. So maybe if you have a comment about any of these makes, please feel free to type your comment in, because that's the first decision that somebody needs to take. Should they invest in a smart board, for example? Smart are the biggest resellers of IWBs in the world today, and many teachers like them because you can use your fingers, or specifically the back of your fingernail, to actually move text and visuals around. In the UK, we're used to the other make of IWBs as coming through as Promethean. Promethean boards are also very well known throughout the globe. You do need an e-pen to use those. And I've just been to Cambridge to take some training with Hitachi, and I got to know their Starboard, and they're very robust. So those are the really well-known makes. I was at BET, the training conference for technology, last January, and there were 15 stalls only from China of makes of IWBs in China. Somebody from Australia told me that they had a completely different board. So this is just a moment, if you do have a board that you are happy with and you know the make of it and you want to just say why you like it, do let us know. Otherwise, I'll just mention Mimeos, which are very popular in some parts of the world. These little devices that you can stick by suction against the side of an ordinary whiteboard, and they project a beam of light across, and you can make the surface interactive. And some places like the e-beam, it used to be old, a round thing, but this is a very sexy new e-beam that's just come out, and also the new model is good. Thanks to Jennifer for mentioning Panasonic boards, and I think this is the way it's going now, that soon maybe the IWB itself will be a touch screen, and you can use that in the same way. iPads. I have my wonderful, wonderful iPad here, and on the iPad there is a lovely little app that you can get to download, which is called Screen Chomp. You can see it here. This is a recording tool. So if you click here, you can see you've got pens, and that means the screen of your iPad becomes like an interactive whiteboard. And I think that's very, very interesting for people who do a lot of one-to-one, for example. You can import a photograph onto that as the background and then write on the surface. When you record, you can send the recording directly to Facebook, for instance. So you can send the recording of a lesson across a distance. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so it's interesting about Japan adopting Promethean. It's always interesting to find out why somebody chose one particular board or another. So that's just a little word about hardware. And if we move on to software, depending on which make of board you get, you have wonderful things to unpack. So I think with Smart and Promethean in particular, as well as Hitachi, there are huge numbers of pictures. You can pull out videos. There are charts, maps, flags, timelines, all for unpacking. So it's a really wonderful moment, just pulling out flags different currencies, just these kind of blank templates, for instance, of a diary that you can fill in. And if you want to create your own material, you're not necessarily always alone. You can get these templates, for instance, to create clines, such as the one here, which is from Smart, I think. So quite a lot in terms of the software which comes along with your board. If, of course, you use a course book, then the book that you use may well now have an active version. It's sometimes called an active book, or the interactive version of the course book. Courseware, this is known as, and some of the courseware is extremely sophisticated. For instance, here you have all of the IWB tools actually inside the courseware itself, and so that's a good example. So I think people use a huge number of different course books, and if you go and explore the course books, you might find that more and more now they are coming with these active books. Richmond have made a very interesting contribution where I believe some of the assets on their multimedia packages are you can actually change the order of the assets, which is extremely interesting. It's like creating your own syllabus. It's good news for business English teachers, I think, that at last they were always left behind, but now if you happen to use one particular course book, you can actually get software with that. So quite a lot of interesting software around. And if you're slightly better off, you can get some really interesting, they're called peripherals, things that go along. So let's start here with slates, and I think slates are fantastic because you can go to the back of the classroom and you can operate the IWB from the back of the classroom, which is really important, not letting the IWB dominate. You can also, of course, pass the slate from student to student, which is really nice. You can use wireless to actually text what you type in here straight to the board. So if you ask your students to spell something, they can text that to the board and their spelling will appear on the board. And of course, learner response devices are extremely popular, and they're so popular now for voting that there are more makes coming out. Have a look at this. This is a mobile phone screen, and here you can actually use a mobile device just to vote and send your what you think to the front. That appears on the screen at the front. So the IWB. So quite a lot of new things coming out, such as Quizdom do this, Turning Point do this. So before these were peripherals with an IWB, but now voting tools are becoming so interesting that you can actually use those as freestanding. And something I've never done but I'd love to do, and if anybody would like to email me after this, I wonder if we could set up a way of somehow connecting our classrooms, because IWBs are so often associated with just working within four walls, and that's a great pity, because if you could connect a classroom in one country with a classroom in another country using conference software, such as the software we're using now, then I think there are lots and lots of really interesting things. So Jennifer, you're on. I don't know when we'll do it, but let's see if in 2012 we can connect our classrooms so your students could speak to mine. It's such a great idea, I think, to just open this out. Isn't it worth remembering that IWB started in the business world? They actually were used to have much more effective presentations, and then once again education inherits this tool. So I think it's very interesting. Okay, so let's move now to part 2, and this is really a big question, one that I completely avoided in the Macmillan conference that we had recently, because I just assumed in that session that everybody had an IWB. But of course that's not the case, and that people discuss whether or not to make this purchase for quite a long time. So let's just sum up some of the reasons why it's a good idea to get one. I think first of all, you can show a picture bit by bit using the screen reveal tool, so your presentations at the beginning of the lesson can be really memorable. Take a photograph yourself, bring it in and reveal it bit by bit, getting the students to guess what it is. That for me is the number one reason why we're doing all of this. That you have your lessons in your memory stick and you go from one term to the next with all your lessons on PowerPoint, all your lessons which you have created or which are from the courseware, just ready to reuse and to adapt and amend. And I think in this digital world, this is such a wonderful thing. And if you think about it, at the end of any lesson, how easy is it to just go back over the lesson and review, because you have all your digital flip charts there. If you're using a course book, of course the students still have got the course book, but what you're encouraging from time to time is let's all be on the same page. Let's just look up and let's mark an exercise or do an intro to an exercise using the IWB software. This is called heads-up learning. One of the things that teachers love about using this kind of software is that you can just go to just the one answer that you want to listen to. So for example, so it's number 1 and number 4 that are difficult, so let's just listen to those answers and just click here for number 1 and here for number 4. When I was at school, if you moved and jiggled around a lot in your class, the teacher would always tell you to stop moving. Stop moving! Okay, and I think that that's a wholly different proposition now for people that need to move in order to assimilate information. Think about what you're doing now. Are you watching? Are you listening? Or are you just moving around and assessing information? So getting students up to the front is absolutely, I think, what it's all about. And I think once it's up there, once it's been set up, it's so great to have it. So it's really, really helpful for just-in-time teaching. In other words, you don't have to connect to the internet. You don't have to set everything up. The internet's just there. It's coming through the IWB, so you can just go up and do a Google search. Okay, so Phil's got a question about Google Documents. I'm going to go back, Phil, if that's okay, and have a look at your question again, because I can't give it the time it deserves just at the moment, because I need to just stop and pause. So please bear with me, and I'll definitely try and check that out for you and get back to you. Okay, I'm going to just move on to some of the negative things, and it's so interesting because it doesn't matter how many times you run through pedagogical reasons, the single most negative reaction about IWBs always comes down to money, so we'll just side skip that. That's just an issue. And of course sometimes you go in and the pen doesn't sit exactly right with what you're drawing on the board, so you do have to take time out to calibrate it. The procedure is quite simple, and of course the learning curve at the beginning can be quite steep. It's not as steep as for something like Second Life, for example, but you do have to suddenly just give up all your skills and go back to being a baby again and just learning. And of course it's very well known that if you're running PowerPoint and so on, that you can actually encourage a teacher-centered classroom. That doesn't have to be the case. And of course what's gone wrong in so many places is that people have just simply got fired up with the technology and said we must have this, and they've forgotten many of the other things, such as the teacher training, such as what teachers feel about IWBs, and so the implementation has been quite poor in some places. So let's just finish off this look at pros and cons by saying that it's well known that teachers go through a number of stages in their IWB learning. This is a very common way, which is from this book, which I'm trying to show you in the screen here, which is called Web 2 and Second Language Learning, and this suggests that there are 3 stages. The introductory stage, where you kind of use quite a lot the IWB, probably all the way through the lesson. But then there's an intermediate stage where you begin to realign your teaching practice with what you already know, and you finally come out with something which is extremely creative, where you are suddenly seeing new things. I only had time this morning to look very, very briefly at this book, so I'm just exploring it, but there's a nice article by Maureen Haldane which goes through the stages, starting off with stage 1 as being like foundation, and then formative, through facility, fluency. But I love this, don't you? Isn't this great? Flying, when you're really flying with ideas, and it would be so great to receive some ideas from any of you out there that are flying with them, and you can send that in again. Okay, I'm sorry you couldn't see the books. Don't worry, they're all written down on the list. It's really difficult to actually work out where my camera is. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, as long as you get the idea that the books are heavy. Ah, yes, thank you, Phyllis, on the left. I'm really bad, aren't I? Let's see if I can... Whoa, keep going. There we go. Interactive whiteboards for education, theory, research, and practice. And that will be also on the blog, and I'll send you all the details. Thank you very, very much to Michael Thomas and Ewing Cutcher Smith for enabling me to receive a copy of that. That's my Christmas reading. Okay, so let's move on now to part 3. And really, I've just pulled back and thought, okay, you've got one of these things. What difference does it make? And my feeling is it can make a huge difference, just having this in the room, if you're lucky enough, and it can make a difference to how we approach grammar, vocabulary. In terms of skills, I think technology has affected the receptive skills, that's listening and reading, much, much more than the productive skills. Of course, it's had an effect on the productive skills of speaking and writing, but perhaps the biggest benefit has been in the former 2 areas. We'll have a look at phonology, and we'll finish off with games. So let's start with the area of grammar. And I believe in the past, in the whole area of multimedia, CD-ROMs came out, then CD-ROMs became DVD-ROMs, and they were used very, very largely by students in the self-access center. So always, if you dragged this to here, you would get feedback which said, "Ding, that's right," or okay, that's wrong. I think IWBs basically allow the whole power of multimedia to finally actually come into the classroom rather than the self-access center. And I think that what we have now is a situation where the teacher is there, the IWB is there, and the learners are there. So in the self-access center, maybe you just have the learners interacting with multimedia. But in the classroom now, the teacher can mediate, can use IWBs, but you don't have to code in the answer. That's such a critical point. If you write a CD-ROM or a DVD-ROM, you have to know the answer. You can only look at black and white areas of language, generally speaking, because if you're going to provide the answer, you can't provide the answer sometimes, maybe, perhaps, usually you do need to say yes or no. So in Scrivener's ARC model, basically the teacher is there, probably in the classroom, clarifying things. Now they can use multimedia as a way of clarifying grammatical problems. So I've seen a big rise in the area of awareness-raising activities. This was one that I did for the last webinar, and if anybody was there, you'd remember that I was asking people what they thought about these things, such as 40 people. And very, very obviously, I think if my students came out, they would drag 40 people to correct. That's definitely correct. 40 persons, I think students might decide to drag that down to incorrect. However, they might be an argument that starts, and somebody might disagree with that and say, okay, I'll put that up here. Bye, Jennifer. Lovely. I'm really hoping that I'll see you over there. It's going to be absolutely fantastic in February. Enjoy your afternoon. Okay, so how about this one? Where do you think I should drag that? Would you type into the text chat if I should, bye Jennifer, if I should type in, if I should pull that to correct, likely, unlikely, or incorrect? If we would have done that, so let me just wait for a second, looking at the text chat, and please could you tell me where I should drag? If we would have done that, don't know if somebody could type in what you think. So thank you, Janusz. So that's unlikely language. Aga agrees with Janusz. Does anybody have a different answer? In incorrect, though some native speakers now use this, so they could go down here. And the point is, of course, this is a Klein, and I think it's really lovely that students will disagree with each other and then come out to the board and move these up or down depending on what they would like to, where they'd like to see it. So that's really what we're looking at here, a situation where you can use drag and drop with bits of text, but you don't have to have an answer. The teacher is there moderating it. When I started teaching, this was correct and this was wrong. If I was you. Then the Pet Shop Boys began to sing, If I Was You. This sometimes we actually say is incorrect if we're doing an elementary class with verbs of perception and feeling and so on. And then later on you might listen to an American movie and you might hear, as I did, watching Derailed with Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston said, Charles, you're not understanding me. And I think that maybe if we would have done that is also absolutely fine in US English. So there we've just got a nice situation of using this power of the IWB to look at dodgy areas of language. I'm learning Spanish, or I've spent most of my life learning Spanish. Would you like to guess the first time that an English student meets the verb to be and the verb to be? I would suggest probably around beginners. And would you like to guess the level at which an English guy like me actually sorts out the difference between the verb to be and the verb to be? And I'm an upper intermediate student, and I still make mistakes. So I think awareness raising and just creating these very, very simple things and dragging I'm English to here, and maybe I'm happy to hear, and so on, can be really great for this whole area of awareness raising. Here's a tool I hope that you may have met before. It's called the Infinite Clone tool, and if you take a smiley face and mouse over the smiley face and click Infinite Cloner, it depends if you're in Smart or how this is worded, or Promethean, but basically it just means you can continue to pull out smiley faces or unhappy faces again and again and again and again, and you don't know how many of these you're going to need when you do this exercise. So I think again, just typing in some mistakes that students make, and then asking students to come out to the front and drag down the face to whether they think it's correct. Hopefully we'll have somebody say, oh, I'm in London for 2 days. No, that's wrong, because I mean I've been in London for 2 days, and they might go up and drag a different face down, and so that the teacher is just involved in discussion with the learners about accuracy. Okay, so let's move on to some ideas in the area of vocabulary, and storage is just such a fascinating area, isn't it? How do your students store their new vocabulary? What vocabulary comes up in the classroom, and how do people want to write it down? I know that Vaughan, one of the Inside Out authors, has often talked about using a class scribe, and one of the great ways of viewing an IWB is just this fantastic tool at the back of the room that you can just capture stuff that comes up. So it was really fascinating to hear Luke Meddings talk about the concept of dogme, teaching without published materials, or teaching with very, very little by the way of materials, and how that might link with the IWB. And he just said, if there's one there, why not just use it to capture stuff? It's great for if you do presentations of how to continue after your classes. How would you store your vocabulary? So if you use an electronic storage medium such as the Macmillan English Campus to store words, then you can obviously just simply bring up the campus and do some work in class about storage. And what's really nice, in our book, he says, mentioning our book for the first time and just waving it around here, if I can just get it on screen, this wonderful book called 400 Ideas for Interactive Whiteboards. There's a lovely little case study there about building up an e-vocabulary notebook. In other words, just having on your server some kind of notebook software that all the class can contribute to, where you just type in words and just using the IWB constantly as a way of capturing the words that come up and then opening up the notebook, adding them, and students can then look at them. It's really worth reading that case study. So just having the IWB as a way of talking in continuing to learn sessions, learning to learn sessions, about how to store vocabulary is a really useful thing. Have you seen these lovely post-it notes? If you're using courseware such as Global Digital or New Inside Out Digital, you can just open up one of these little post-it notes in the software and write down or type in any words you want. So if you're dealing with starters with your students, your low-level learners, and they keep coming up with lots of things in their own language, such as hors d'oeuvre, or they just want to say, oh yeah, we have pate, or melon hamon is up there, you can just open this, write in, and then close it again. And when you go out of the software, just remember to look at the notes that you've saved, and then they can come up next time. So if you're writing a translation, for instance, they'll be there for the next class you teach, and I think that's great, just being able to just use stuff in one lesson in the next one. Okay, the next idea in the area of vocabulary is word frequency, and I think that people will probably be familiar with the word frequency system in the MED, the Macmillan English Dictionary. Here's an example from the iPad version of the MED, which just shows this 3-star system. So imagining a very, very, very common word, top 2,500 would have 3 stars, common words perhaps 2 stars, fairly common words 1 star, and less common words, those outside the productive vocabulary of 7,500 words, would be in black. So we just go through these 5 words. Frame. If you've got a pen and you want to just jot down what you think they are in terms of frequency. Fracture. Nomination. Nod as a verb, and rob. And starting with frame, any thoughts? Would you just like to type in the word frame and just say if you think instinctively if it's a red word or a black word? So Janice thinks it's got no stars. Caroline thinks it's 2. Fracture has got 1 star, nomination has got 2, and I think Nod's got 2. You can see how this exercise works. You can clearly do this with any words that you choose. It doesn't really matter, but what's so interesting is I think native speakers can make a really, really good guess. Students sometimes can, but sometimes they can be all over the place. So frame, it would really depend on if it was a noun. If it's a noun, it's a 2-star word, and if it's a verb to frame, then it's a 3-star word. Black, the black word is fracture. Nomination is 2 stars, and nod as a verb is the most frequent, it's 3 stars. And just to finish this off, rob as a verb is 2-star. And the most important thing about this is that you can just build up your flip charts and just reuse this kind of material, change your examples, and just have this stored on your memory stick, for example. So that's just a little exercise on vocabulary that I find very, very effective. And I think it's just this idea of being able to revisit your material once you've created the actual material for the flip chart, and then come back to it from time to time. Vocabulary is so great to just import your own picture and write all over it. Remember that these words here are just your writing. They're being overlaid, but you can save the diagram with the words. Okay, so let's move into the 4 language skills now. We'll start with listening, and I think it is wonderful, of course, that the audio is all in one place. So all of these tools that you have here for actually watching with a transcript, or here you've got the transcript here, you could have the transcript on, you could have the transcript off, you could use the screen reveal to cover it up and just have students listening silently. So I think the number of options that are there for improving listening is really great. And this idea that in a listening you can just touch one sentence like that and that sentence will play is absolutely wonderful. So in our book there is a little activity where you touch sentences out of sequence and ask the students to work together and of course predict what the listening will be about, for example. But this level you cannot achieve with a CD audio, you can't achieve it with an audio cassette. It's only through this kind of digital material that you can get to single sentence playing. And certainly for listening, running through the IWB all your favorite sites. Those are some of mine. TED.com, what fantastic presentations, and you have an interactive transcript there. YouTube, I don't know, I'm in 2 minds about YouTube. I think it's generally full of sort of not very good things, to be honest, but my students this summer, they loved it and they played YouTube videos as part of their presentation with no preparation, and the other students absolutely loved them. But if you're a bit worried about the dross, then clearly Jamie Keddy's wonderful site Lesson Stream is great, just creating that material. But just having it there, having the IWB there, knowing you can just go up to the internet. Clearly you've got to check the audio, but it's just, I think it's just wonderful. Moving on to reading, and reading I think is something that students want to do with a piece of paper in front of them at their own speed. But when you come then to just have a look at a text, it's great to be able to mouse over a text in a course book and then using these kinds of tools just to be able to annotate it and save the annotations in the way that you want. Looking at, for instance, just the simple pass regulars, irregulars could be shown in different colours. Okay, time to go musical, guys. Tell me a song. Please just type your song into the text chat of a song with lyrics that you would absolutely love to use with your students. I'll share one of mine with you guys. I love Nick Cave, and I absolutely love his song Lament, and this is something I've been dying to use with my students, and finally this summer I did, just simply going up to lyrics.com, and I think it's just so great to be able to gap lyrics the way that you want. I actually used a mix and match, so I asked my students to match Fairground, for instance, with Common People by Pulp from Sheffield, where I grew up. Absolutely wonderful song. I think I'd forget about language and be jumping around the classroom at that one. Anyway, my students need to match these across: Fairground Hair, Fairground Eyes, Fairground Tooth, Fairground Truth, Fairground Lies. I'm not sure about that one. Little Hair, Little Eyes. Again, I'm not sure. But clearly, once you've finished this, when you play the song, the collocations are utterly incredible, and I don't think you can guess the collocations often. You might be able to get vampire tooth maybe, but what's so brilliant is something that Michael Lewis said about idiom, which is we have idiom, and we tend to think of idiom as fixed, such as black and white, not white and black, or it's raining cats and dogs, not it's raining dogs and cats. But my wife's Spanish, and she mixes up all the idioms by accident. And what's great is that native speakers actually do change idiom for rhetorical effect. Little lies, yeah, that's lovely, isn't it? You think it's little lies. The actual answer is tiny lies, but I hope you rush off and listen to this song. But anyway, it's just great, I think. Suddenly you've got the whole world of music, Dylan, Bowie, everybody just there. And of course with an IWB you can just get Nick Cave's face, you can just embed the audio if you want to behind that, so just click on his face and bring up the song and so on, and it's wonderful for that. And I think that most of my students read at a particular speed. Could I just say it's usually slowly. So using the screen reveal tool to actually help to control the speed, not only the pace of the lesson globally, but actually the speed at which they read. So you could cover some text, sorry this is a grammar exercise, but obviously it can be a text, and uncover it so that students can skim it and then cover it after a certain amount of time. And usually the students won't have written at the end, they won't have read the whole text in the time that you allow them. And so it's constantly showing them the difference between skimming and then reading for detail, or reading slowly for content processing. Okay, I've skipped on a few slides, too many there, so let's move now to the productive skills. We'll start with speaking, and I mentioned this exercise in the webinar, the online conference recently, this idea of going to Google Earth and then asking your students to actually find a real journey that they have to make, and then actually start to describe the journey to you and use the tools of the IWB to show you how they make that journey. Really, really nice way to do directions. And so if you're interested in the handout, the link is on the website, so do have a look at that. You can print that out, and it's a great idea from Barney. One thing I use the IWB for now for speaking is just to have it around, almost like a secretarial tool. So perhaps we'll build up a mind map using mind map software, such as this free software you can get on the internet. And at the end of the lesson, when students have generated all their ideas, you can print this out, or have students access it from their machines at home. So it's, I think, a really, really good use of the IWB. Okay, so let's have a quick vote. At this point, what would you say to a school manager who wants to know, should schools invest in an IWB? I'm really thrilled. I'm going to go to India in January. I was born in India, and I just can't wait. One of the questions that somebody has asked me is, should we buy a smart board, a Promethean board, or a Hitachi board? Which board should we buy? More and more school directors say, should we get one? Phil has just said, as a freelance teacher, she wanted to buy one, but the price just killed my dream. Definitely worth looking at these portable things that are coming out of South Korea now. They are so sexy. I don't know how much they cost, but boy, are they portable. I mean, and you really could set one up. It's just becoming such an interesting world. But anyway, once you vote, you type 1, 2, or 3, then clearly, boom, that can be wirelessly sent across to the board, and you can have the results of your poll come up, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Lots and lots of ones going up, and some twos. I'm so glad that ones are coming up. We need to tell the world, don't we, that these things are really, really great. Okay, so let's move on now to the other productive skill of writing, and I think having an IWB to practice writing is just wonderful. You can have the stages of process writing on the whiteboard here, where students come out and put them in order, or you can have a diagram and they drag these words to the correct place on the diagram. Fabulous for bringing up pieces of students writing and then opening up, for instance, this area in Word, where editors are very famous for giving writing feedback using this tool, and you can do that just using the IWB. Correct the piece of text and then save it, and then print it out, or save on printing and just say to students, print on demand. And the handwriting recognition software now in IWBs has really improved tremendously, and so I think that that's absolutely superb. Just mouse over some of this. So if you have low-level students and they're struggling with Roman script, you can get them to come out and write stuff very carefully. Mouse over it and watch the improvement. It's very useful if you're using things like a wiki for your writing courses, just to feel that you can always just go into the wiki. You can do that with a computer and a laptop. You don't need an IWB. Having said that, the element of being able to save text and so on, I think makes it quite attractive. And so using the IWB to let people go in, access other students' texts, and give feedback if your group are open to that. Or none of my students really understand what refutation means. They think it means counter argument. So in other words, they think that they make a list of arguments and then they make a list of counter arguments. But what they don't understand is that you need to actually attack that argument. So giving time, have students put up some arguments and then say, for homework, go to the wiki, type in your refutation, and then in the next lesson we'll go up, bring up the wiki, bring up the students' writing, and we'll have a look at that and annotate that. Okay, so let's move towards the end of the central section of this webinar, which is taking a brief look at phonology. And I think the IWB is kind of, for me, not just having that, it's just the change it gives your teaching practice, because you just think at any point in any lesson I can just pull up an interactive version of the phonemic chart or the phonetic chart. This is the one which is available at a .exe file on the internet. Your students can download it to their own computers, but it just means that if you're having a lesson and the students cannot understand each other because they've got a sound problem, you just go to the board, tap on bring up the phonemic chart, and then just do a quick bit of sound practice. And there are many of these within course books. The number of charts has grown, I think, dramatically, which are interactive. And in the whole area of pronunciation, I think it just joins beautifully with an IWB. You're doing sound linking. What do people hear? They hear tay, kit, tin. They hear one apple, two wapples. Thank you to the lady that showed this wonderful example. Her name just escapes me, I'm terribly sorry, but just this whole idea of phi, of elephants, and just being able to do this sort of thing. Bring up squares, show where the stress is, get students to come out, put the audio embedded on the IWB board so they can hear read or read, or they can come out and do a drag and drop for the simple past endings. It's just so wonderful to link colour, sound, and so on. I think creative teachers just find so many things to do with the IWB. In terms of language games, I will put my cross here. I just don't play language games really in my classes, just maybe from time to time. But I have noticed that lots of students love doing these on their own. But what happens if we do join IWBs and games? Well, I think the first thing to mention is that in publisher software, you can actually author some of the games, and I think that's absolutely brilliant. Here's an example from New Inside Out Digital where you can put in the words that you want to practice with your learners. Okay, you can use digital dice, I always say, but there we go. And a wonderful idea is throwing a ball at the interactive whiteboard. It needs to be a soft ball, like a koosh ball. And there's a lovely idea in our book. Thanks so much to Joe Timerick for suggesting that. The Hitachi board, you can bang it and bang it and bang it, and it won't break. It's wonderful. So have the answers on the board, and your students come out and chuck something to activate the answer. It's apparently it's great. And this idea of using the games on something like the campus, where your students are in line and they come out and rush up to the board and press a button and try and build a bridge and so on. I'm sure it can be great fun. Okay. We're just about 5 minutes to the end of this webinar now, and so I will answer that question that came earlier, but I'd really like to do it after the webinar, if that's okay, so I can go back and just have a quick think. I'll get the answer to that. But if anybody does have a question that they can type in to the chat room, then we've got a couple of minutes. Please go ahead. I'm just staring at that, and while I'm staring at it, just to say, if you don't have a question, that's absolutely okay, because you can email me, or you can type in a question afterwards. How would you combine IWB and iPads? Wow, that sounds a really, really interesting question. I don't know enough about using iPads in the classroom. I've imagined that they're wonderful tools for using outside of the classroom, but I think that there must be a way. The first thing that comes to mind is, with the iPad 2, I think you can actually connect the iPad to the screen. So students have prepared a Prezi or a PowerPoint presentation. Perhaps they could run it through the IWBs. Daniela, I'm going to make a note of that, because I'd like to follow this up by having a think about that. I'm writing that down now. And it's one of those things, isn't it? I can't think of anything at the moment except, yay! The technology didn't crash, so I'm really happy at the moment. But I'm not very good at thinking of the answers on the spur at the moment. There seems to be a lot of lessons ready-made for primary schools. Are there any for the EFL classroom? The short answer to that is yes, 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 yes. There are huge communities out there, Smart, Promethean, they all encourage you to share lessons. And if you buy software such as, I don't know, courseware, it's the same thing. That there's a website, you can go and benefit from all of your colleagues' lessons if that would help you. And I think it would. It's just spending time, isn't it? We also have to develop the digital competence of the students. Jesus, I totally agree, and I think that's happening now, where digital competence is like a light skill, isn't it? Do studies show any effectiveness of using the IWB at secondary level? Janusz, what a wonderful question. Please give me just a couple of weeks at Christmas, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read what the studies show. There are definitely studies which show that the answer is yes, but I think I'd like to read that in much, much more detail. So I'll do that over Christmas, and I will post the answers on my blog as an answer. Okay, well, I love working on all of those things, Jesus. Yeah, there are so many things. I know, it's an incredible world, but it's an exciting one. So let me just finish off this webinar now by saying, what could you do now? Well, I'd love you to read Wayne Trotman's review of 400 activities. Thank you so much, Wayne. I love you forever. Wayne has written, setting aside my pride, I have to admit that at the outset, I wasn't at all convinced I'd ever be interested in using IWB technology with my classes, but this title makes doing so much more of a possibility. So much more of a possibility. You may soon notice further literature on IWB. Yes, Broman, I will definitely ensure you get the blog address right at the end of this, no problem at all. This resource book will probably remain the prototype. Well done, the authors. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. About the certificate, I'm sure that Caroline will mention that, or you can have a look at that. Okay, so really I think it's a question of let me review this book and give you what it says in the book, and I think it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You do need to think about the research, but in terms of a practitioner's book, this is absolutely great, just to give you loads of ideas. If you want to have a look at our video, yeah, a list of references, Phil, absolutely. It's on the blog at the moment, and if there's anything I mentioned that is not there, well, let's get back to that. There's a link to this video because many people do not believe that Barney Barrett actually exists, but he does. That's him. And very, very few people believe that Francis exists, but he is there. He's in Wales. And Macmillan ELT, thank you very much for hosting this video. We've had 302 views, so thanks a lot. You can get a free update to Blended Learning, update number 10, and it is completely free, and it's all about IWB. So please go up to that website. That is also up there. And if you've done something great, please, please, please think about downloading this template and write up what you've done and send it over. I'd be happy, very happy to share that on our site. If you want to follow up this, Barbara Gardner, who works at Study Centres, is absolutely an amazing exponent of using IWBs, so don't do anything on Sunday the 15th of January. Get up there and see what Barbara has to say. And if you're in the UK, then do think about coming to London. English UK are doing a training day. I'm going to run that. I'm preparing it now. We're going to be using Promethean boards throughout the school, the Wimbledon School of English in London, so that would be great. And do think about us, my little baby company. We've just been over to Luxembourg, Luxembourg, where Francis Jones did a training day, and you can find out the kinds of things that we do, and we'd be happy to go anywhere in the world as long as you pay the ticket. Go up and have a look at the interactive technologies in language teaching, right? When are you coming to Poland? Janice, as soon as I possibly can. I must speak to Greg Spivich. Oh, there's about 1 minute left. But it's just to say, this is a very impolite article which tells you 10 things to do with an interactive whiteboard. Some of them are very, very rude, but eventually it gets down to using them creatively. So this is what you wanted. This was the website. If you've got a pen, it's www.psa.eu.com. If you go there now and go to this morning's entry on the blog, you'll find all the links and all of the handouts. And I've got 4 o'clock on my watch. Thank you so much to DVD Okabo for saying it was awesome, because it's absolutely brilliant to hear that. I'm so glad. That's what I think we did. I'm going to go out with my dog, who is very famous, and I hope you can see him. He's just there. I hope you can see him. Thank you, Caroline, number 2. And I'll wake him up, our beautiful lab, and take him out. So thank you so, so much for coming, everybody. Please, please come along. Yeah, I hope I'll see you in Poland. And goodbye to everybody that's typing into the text chat. And I'm going to say goodbye from Stratford. And best of luck to everybody. Oh, I can't sort of resist just seeing all those lovely messages of goodbye. So bye to everybody, and please visit our site, and I hope you get all the links. If not, just tell me and I'll link. So I'll turn off my camera, I'll turn off my mic. Have a lovely, 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 lovely day to everybody. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.